Vaping is now illegal in Taiwan, as the country has banned all electronic cigarettes. Taiwan's government is setting up a system to protect tenants' rental deposits from dishonest landlords. Russian President Vladimir Putin praises Beijing's peace plan for Ukraine as Chinese leader Xi Jinping's trip to Moscow ends. Plus, Japan takes home its third World Baseball Classic trophy in Miami. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Eric Gao. Starting off with new regulations here in Taiwan, electronic cigarettes are now officially banned. The new rules are part of the updated Tobacco Hazards Prevention Act, which lawmakers passed in January. The bill bans the import, sale, and manufacture of e-cigarettes with fines of up to $1.6 million. Even vaping itself is illegal. Users of the devices face fines of around $300. The new laws cover more than just e-cigarettes. The legal smoking age has also been raised from 18 to 20. And tobacco products now require health warnings that cover half of the packaging, up from 35%. From health to housing issues, the government is creating a system for settling disputes between landlords and tenants over rent deposits. Most rental units in Taiwan are not officially registered, which can make it hard to hold landlords accountable. John Van Trieste has this story.
Taiwan's millions of apartment renters could soon get more legal protection. The Interior Ministry says it's putting together a system that will help tenants get their deposits back. It's a victory for housing advocates and lawmakers who've backed the idea.
其实英国在最近这几年开始实施，也就是说，它有一个公正的第三方来保管这个押金。到时候解除租约的时候，有纠纷的时候，由这个公正的第三方来决定如何退还这个押金，是否退还这个押金。
It's an idea with plenty of popular support.
第三方公证的话，可以比较有效去保证说，有些状况是可能是房东说的算。
房东好不好跟房客好不好，有时候是很看运气的一件事。确实，如果放在第三方会比较安心。
But backers of this system say there's one major problem to overcome before it can be effective. According to different estimates, anywhere from 70 to 90% of rental units in Taiwan are under the table with no tax registration. The system's supporters say knowing who rents out what property is important. They recommend a temporary tax amnesty so landlords will be willing to come forward and register with the government, followed by a crackdown on landlords who don't.
不要增加太多税负负担的一个制度的一个设计，鼓励房东出来就是如实的申报，再进行就是说一个棍棒的一个督促，让这样的租屋市场就是可以如实的去登录跟揭露。
There's also the question of who the third party will be. Banks have had little interest in handling deposits because the amounts involved are small. But while the new system may be a way off, the government says it will take the first steps to set it up in the coming months. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Military news: Army reservists participated in a mock battle in central Taiwan on Wednesday as part of the country's new 2-week reservist training program. Around 30 reservists are taking part in the drills. During the battle scenario, they practice engaging the enemy, taking cover as a hostile aircraft flew overhead, and helping a wounded comrade. These annual exercises were lengthened in 2022 from 7 days to 14. They also now cover a wider variety of combat situations. This updated program comes as tensions between Taiwan and China continue to grow. In international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has welcomed China's peace plan for the war in Ukraine. This was the result of Chinese President Xi Jinping's 2-day visit to Moscow. But critics say China's self-declared role as international peace broker is not as impartial as it may seem. Joyce Tseng reports.
China's leader Xi Jinping at the Kremlin on Tuesday, meeting with Russian counterpart President Vladimir Putin. It's the second day of Xi's state visit to Moscow. This is the Chinese leader's first trip to Russia since the country invaded Ukraine last year. On the agenda, Beijing's 12-point peace plan for the war. Notably absent from the proposal is any requirement for Russia to withdraw its troops from Ukraine. Putin has welcomed the plan, saying it, quote, correlates to the point of view of the Russian Federation.
за углубление российско-китайского всеобъемлющего партнерства и стратегического взаимодействия.
为深化俄中全面战略协作伙伴关系
За процветание и благополучие народов России и КНР.
为了俄罗斯和中国人民繁荣灿生
Гэньбэй.
干杯
Despite the two leaders toasting their friendship, Beijing has claimed to be a neutral party when it comes to the war in Ukraine. It's a position many countries in the West view with extreme skepticism. In response to the meeting in Moscow, the U.S. says China has not shown any meaningful impartiality in its efforts to negotiate peace.
I don't think you can reasonably look at China as impartial in any way. They haven't condemned this this invasion. They haven't stopped buying Russian oil and Russian energy. So now if China wants to play a constructive role here in this conflict, then they ought to press Russia to pull its troops out of Ukraine and Ukrainian sovereign territory. They should urge President Putin to cease bombing cities, hospitals, and schools, to stop the war crimes and the atrocities, and end the war today.
By Tuesday evening in Moscow, Putin and Xi had signed two joint pacts on stronger economic ties and energy cooperation. These agreements also come just days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin for war crimes in Ukraine, a detail left out of the Chinese state-run media coverage of Xi's visit. Beijing's ties with Moscow have only become more important given continued U.S.-led sanctions on Russia since the beginning of the war. This places Xi, who has just been handed an unprecedented third term as president, in the driver's seat in his proclaimed friendship with Putin.
He also uses the word trust a lot, which itself I think is a little bit, revealing in that the relationship so far has not really been based on trust. It's based on a coincidence of interests. Russia is the junior partner in the relationship between the two, that it means that the so-called no limits partnership essentially does have limits, but those limits increasingly are set by Beijing, and the message is, well, you're just going to have to trust us.
Following his Moscow trip, Xi is reportedly set to hold a virtual meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as Beijing continues working to position itself in the role of peacemaker. But despite China's messages of peace and Putin's praise for the country's plan, there is still little sign of a diplomatic breakthrough over Ukraine. Eason Pan and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky during a surprise visit to Kyiv. Kishida is the final G7 head of state to visit Ukraine since Russia's invasion. He pledged an additional $30 million in non-lethal aid to the country through a NATO trust fund. He also promised $470 million to help Ukraine with energy and other needs. Kishida said he invited Zelensky to virtually join the upcoming G7 summit, which will take place in Hiroshima in May. In sports, the 2023 World Baseball Classic wrapped up on Tuesday, with Japan claiming its third tournament victory. Yvonne Young takes a look at the final game.
A perfect record. Japan was undefeated in all 7 games it played in this year's World Baseball Classic. At the final match in Miami on Tuesday, two-way player Ohtani Shohei revved up the 9th inning, striking out his LA Angels teammate Mike Trout. Japan beat Team USA 3-2, clinching its 3rd WBC win. Ohtani was also crowned the tournament's MVP. After the finals, the tournament announced the All-World Baseball Classic team. Top players from each position are added to the honorary roster. No surprise, Ohtani was on the list, not once, but twice, as both pitcher and designated hitter. Team Taiwan had one player on the list, first baseman Yu Chang. Though Taiwan didn't make it out of the first round, Chang was named the MVP of Pool A. In the 4 games he played, he scored 8 runs with 7 hits out of 16 at-bats, including 2 home runs. And that's a wrap of the 2023 World Baseball Classic. Patrick Chen and Yvonne Yang for TaiwanPlus.
In other regional news, Vietnam has made its largest ivory smuggling bust in years. Authorities discovered 7 metric tons of ivory in a shipping container earlier this week. The elephant tusks were originally from Angola and had passed through Singapore. Vietnam's government is investigating the case. This latest seizure follows the discovery of 600 kilograms of smuggled ivory in Vietnam last month. Turning to Africa, Uganda's parliament has passed a bill criminalizing LGBTQ people. Homosexual acts are already illegal in the country. The latest bill makes openly identifying as LGBTQ a crime. Penalties include possible death sentences for so-called aggravated homosexuality. The bill also bans support for LGBTQ people and requires citizens to inform on anyone in a same-sex relationship. The bill now goes to the desk of Uganda's president, who does have a history of opposing LGBTQ rights. However, it's unclear whether the law will stay in place even if it's signed. A 2013 anti-LGBTQ law drew Western sanctions before Uganda's constitutional court struck it down. Coming up, researchers in the UK have built a house designed to withstand extreme weather expected under climate change. Find out more after the break. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus. For more great stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. You've done it, right? Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. More than 20 works of art by Indigenous artists from Canada are now on display at Taipei's Sun Yi Gallery. It's part of the country's cultural exchange program with Taiwan. Many of the works carry somber meanings, reflecting on the mistreatment that Canada's Indigenous groups have faced. Yujing Huang takes us through her visit to the exhibition.
The Canadian Indigenous DNA language is presented with pins, puncturing through some printed images of tongues. The tongues belong to the artist's family members. Catherine Blackburn's mixed media work, Our Mother's Tongue, hints at the loss of native languages to a colonial history. It showcases a people's history, culture, identity, and transformation. The Canadian Representative Office is holding its largest art exhibition in Taiwan in 20 years. Pieces from the Canadian Indigenous Art Center are in the spotlight. After a month-long show in Tainan, the Persistence Resistance, Taiwan-Canada Indigenous Art Exhibition, has arrived in Taipei. The exhibition is the first part of Festica, Canada's cultural exchange project with Taiwan, which launched last September. The exhibit is currently on display at the Sun Yi Gallery. The project includes 21 works from Canadian Indigenous artists.
It includes works from past and present, from all three of Canada's Indigenous groups, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. In other words, it provides an excellent overview of the breadth and depth of the artistic production of our Indigenous peoples.
Different materials were used to express the various themes on display, many of which depict real-life instances of some of the dark experiences Indigenous communities in Canada have faced. Tanya Willard's woodblock print, Be a Good Girl, depicts the assimilation policies that the government forced upon young Indigenous women in the 1950s. Rebecca Belmore's photographic work, Fringe, shows the politicization of an Indigenous woman's body. The wound left by history is on the mend, yet her scar will never fully heal. Belmore traveled to Taiwan for the exhibition to share in the cultural exchange.
I think we share many common experiences, especially in terms of our histories and dealing with colonial oppression. So I think that's important that it is here and that with the hope that maybe this will carry on and happen more often with exchanges between indigenous populations globally.
As with those in Canada, Taiwan's indigenous communities are also still recovering from their country's colonial past. The Canadian artworks have resonated with local indigenous peoples, as they show similar historical traumas.
其实，在这样的场合，在这样的现场，遇到不同族群、来自世界各国的朋友，作为原住民，我们会觉得不孤单；作为一个国家，而且是多民族的国家，我们更觉得不孤单。
The Canadian Representative Office hopes the exhibition will help people in Taiwan understand the problems facing indigenous peoples. Problems like the loss of their lands, traditions, and identities. Issues which still affect native communities in both countries to this day. It's hoped that works like these will help to create a deeper understanding in the wider public of the history, culture, and lives of indigenous populations. Alex Chen, Klein Wang, Biqi Zhang, and Yujing Huang, TaiwanPlus.
Have you thought about how you might survive in an extreme weather event? Scientists in the UK have developed a special kind of house designed to withstand all kinds of climate disasters. Sally Jensen reports.
It's not a scenario many like to think about. But with the climate crisis causing more extreme weather, some are considering ways of fortifying their houses to stay alive.
So you can see within this chamber, what we're trying to do is to control the weather. And so we can take it down to -20 and up to +40 and create all the other weather conditions, including snow.
Scientists in the UK have now developed a new kind of house designed to withstand all kinds of extreme climate disasters.
The reason we've designed it is to really understand how houses are going to perform, not just now, but in future climates. So how can they perform against extreme weather events, extreme cold and extreme heat?
The house has been built in a chamber that can replicate environments from around the globe.
This helps us undertake repeatable experiments, which you can't do anywhere else in the world.
So it's a big experiment, really. It's to find out what is the best for these particular types of houses.
The aim is to protect homes and the people that live in them against an uncertain future.
The climate is changing. We can all understand the climate's changing. It's not just going to get warmer, it's going to get more extreme. There's going to be things like drier summers but wetter winters as well. So our goal here is to look at developing a way of testing these buildings to their extreme.
The future home is also built in line with renewable energy standards and with lightweight materials to reduce its carbon impact.
The walls themselves are a very different wall. They look like brick, but they're actually a brick effect. So the system itself is a lot lighter.
You can see outside it's snowing. We can, take it from Nordic winters to Saharan summers in a home that we've taken the lessons from and put the technology in here that we see being used in the future.
Millions more people are going to have to contend with human-made climate change. Homes like this one can help prepare us for the changes to come. But in spite of the welcoming interiors, those who can't afford the price tag may be left out in the cold. Alex Chen and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
Today is World Water Day, which aims to speed up efforts to solve the world's water crisis. Southern Taiwan is suffering from a drought right now, which is causing big losses to the agriculture industry. Tea leaves are drying up and fruits are not reaching maturity. This is affecting crop yields and farmers' incomes. According to local authorities, agricultural losses across 3 areas are currently around $1.8 million. To conserve water, the government has cut off irrigation to several farms. This has caused some farmers to resort to extreme measures to try and get hold of water. Authorities say they are now working on measures to offer a lifeline to farmers if the droughts continue throughout the year.
5月的梅雨是不是能够来到还不确定。那7月、8月是不是有台风也不确定。那因此必须提早预警，提早部署。
Taiwan's water crisis has put the spotlight on the nation's reservoirs, some of which have been around for nearly 100 years. In one rural village in the south, they revere the Japanese man who they call the father of Taiwan's irrigation. Sally Jensen went there to learn more.
This is the father of Taiwan's irrigation. He wasn't born in Taiwan, but over 1,000 kilometers away in Kanazawa, Japan. His name was Yoichi Hata.
Hata came to Taiwan during the Japanese occupation as an official, but Taiwanese people still respect him for his contributions to hydraulic engineering. The water systems he put in place have been essential for growing the country's staple crop, rice.
People still come here to Wushantou Reservoir in Tainan to pay their respects over 80 years after Hata's death. But the Japanese occupation of Taiwan and the mega projects it brought came at a high human cost. So why do people still love him so much?
The plains of Jiayi and Tainan were once barren land prone to droughts and floods. Hata is credited with transforming them into fertile farmland. He constructed the irrigation system known as the Jianan Waterworks and changed the lives of around 600,000 farmers. Every year, a memorial service is held near his former residence here in Tainan. People come from all parts of Taiwan and even from Japan to commemorate the life of a man who transformed agriculture here.
The Japanese occupation of Taiwan remains a controversial issue in the country's history. But here in the tranquility of this reservoir, visitors prefer to reflect on the great feat of engineering left to generations of Taiwanese farmers by a simple man from Japan. Ethan Chen and Sally Jensen in Tainan for TaiwanPlus.
Yesterday, the UN's leading climate science body released a report showing that humanity is hurtling towards catastrophe if we don't do more to reduce emissions. One solution proposed was encouraging people to eat a low-carbon diet. Taiwan recently made waves around the world for including this measure as part of its new climate bill. Sally Jensen spoke to Wu Hong from East Taiwan, an animal rights NGO that played a key role in getting this action signed into that law.
Compared with the rest of the world, the rate of vegetarianism in Taiwan is pretty high. So why do you think that's not enough?
吃素的居士，很多年轻人都开始吃素。那也有很多的好的餐厅，除了一般我们说的素食自助餐，好像看到台湾的素食其实都很好吃。我们外国的朋友来，或者是我们外国的团体来，都觉得台湾素食哇好棒。但是整体肉食量是增加的，所以我想这个目前台湾的确在这个地方，我们是需要政府也好，我们社会也好，我们的民众也好，都要努力的去认知到这样的一个问题。
So meat consumption is on the rise, and what are the reasons people should start eating plant-based?
就是我们的肉食量太多，它不仅仅是影响我们的健康，也影响的我们的健保啊。那健保的这个支出花了很多钱用在很多的跟肉食有关的这些疾病上面。目前来讲，气候变迁也是变成一个很及时，我们马上要面对的问题，大家都可以贡献。那个贡献就是你要从这个蔬食的多选择蔬食开始。
You mentioned climate change. Why was it important for you to talk about people's diet in Taiwan's new climate bill?
我们觉得这个气候变迁这件事情涉及到 food system 的这个对于这个二氧化碳的这个贡献也是很大的，特别是肉类啊等等。那国际上也谈得非常多，只要你谈到 food system， 谈到 low carbon diet， 通常都会谈到 meatless 少吃肉，或者是 plant-based diet。所以我觉得是很重要的，让我们的民众，让这个社会知道，从食物上对这个气候变迁的因应也很重要。
What were some of the challenges you faced?
本来我们想要在条文里面放这个 plant-based diet。那但是他们可能觉得冲击会太大，那对大家可能会误会啊，就是因为用在台湾啊，这个用素食或者用蔬食或者是吃斋，这三个都是在英文都是 vegetarian， 但是可能大家的 concept 会不一样，听到吃斋就会觉得好像是跟宗教有关。那最后那在条文里面是放了这个 low carbon diet 低碳饮食。但是在这个说明，就是 reference 里面有提到，这个 low carbon diet include plant-based diet， 以及不要剩食，尽量吃 local 的食物 local food 这样子。所以这是一个很大的，我想在台湾算是一个很大的进步。蔬食的推广的立法不是说你一定要，而是 promote， 政府要去 promote 这样。
So are you pleased with the result, and is your job finished?
当然我们觉得很高兴，但是这个是一个 first step 而已。 刚刚开始，但是实际上台湾的肉食量还是增加的。我们觉得整体来讲，并没有达到那个一个减量的效果。我们会希望政府在它的施政、推广、promote 这些计划里面，都有把这个低碳饮食跟这个蔬食推广能够放进去，这是我们下一步要做的事情。
That was Sally Jensen talking to Wu Hong from East Taiwan about the country's promotion of a plant-based diet to combat climate change. Speaking of a plant-based diet, fruit exports from Taiwan's eastern Taidong County to China could be set to resume. Taidong's deputy chief, Wang Zihui, is due to head to China soon. He hopes to broker a deal that would see local farmers' sugar apples regain access to the Chinese market. The fruit was banned by Beijing 2 years ago after Chinese authorities said that they found pests in the shipments from Taiwan. But Taiwan's government says the bans on sugar apples and other fruits are politically motivated. Taidong's farmers say they're looking forward to regaining access to the Chinese market.
价格已经这么差了，而且丰原世家这2年都已经价格非常低廉，希望如果还有机会的话，还可以再回到以前的那个价格。
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Remember to download the Taiwan Plus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these shots of the GKA Kitesurf World Cup in Cape Verde. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.